This is Take That for Data,
where Braxton Critcher, Gray Salter, and Scott Spickard break down sports data for you. The guys on Take That for Data will collect, analyze, and interpret the most up-to-date and groundbreaking sports statistics on your favorite teams. Here's WASU Assistant Sports Director and your host, Braxton Critcher.
What's up, statisticians? Take That for Data is back. Braxton Critcher, Scott Spickard, and Gray Salter here with you, and we're talking all about the NFL Draft this week as we are just a couple days away. It's next week. We're talking all about Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Baker Mayfield, and more quarterbacks in this draft. To get to that in a minute, start it all off with It's About Time with my man, Gray Salter.
It's about time. Yeah.
It's about time.
It's about time.
It's about time. It's about time.
There is much speculation this year that the Cleveland Browns, with the security of Tyrod Taylor under center, may look to Saquon Barkley with the first pick to solidify that backfield. The last time a running back was taken first overall was by the Bengals back in 1995, 23 years ago, and also included a name coming out of Penn State, Ki-Jana Carter. So it's about time a running back was taken first overall in the NFL Draft, and Saquon Barkley could join his fellow Nittany Lion by doing it this year.
We'll see that coming up. I know the Browns certainly need a quarterback too, but they do have pick number 4, so we'll see how they try and choose 1 and 4 there. Scott, going over to you. Crazy but true.
It's crazy but true. It's crazy but true.
How crazy is this?
The Vegas Golden Knights entered the season with 500-1 odds to win the Stanley Cup. Vegas is now in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs after a clean sweep of the Los Angeles Kings. In one of the most successful first seasons of any expansion team in any professional sport, the Golden Knights are now tied with the Nashville Predators according to the Westgate Las Vegas Superbook at 4-1 odds to win the Stanley Cup. So for a new team in the NHL this season, it's crazy. The Golden Knights have had so much success, and it's even crazier that they are now a Stanley Cup favorite after starting the season at 500-1 odds. It's crazy, but it's true.
Yeah, it's crazy but true that they're an expansion team, right?
Yeah.
I think it was in baseball, the Twins. They were an expansion team and they won a World Series a couple years after. And there's also the Marlins. Mm-hmm. They were an expansion team in '95, I think it was, and they won the World Series in '97. So I don't know what it is about expansion teams, but they always have good success at the beginning.
A lot of energy, a lot of energy in the city, fan base, players, new place, new coaching staff, all of that. But good for them.
Don't expansion teams generally get like certain privileges too when it comes to certain things just because they are expansion teams? I mean, I'm not saying that's any easier for them to win. I'm just saying that does help them out. I think they do get certain privileges.
Yeah, they you can sign free agents too, but they. That's one of those things I've been wanting to look up is what exactly you can do as an expansion team. But they do get privileges and things that kind of help them going into the year because they are an expansion team. You can't just draft a bunch of people and expect to be good ever. Yeah. You can't just get a bunch of rookies out there and try and win a bunch of games in any league. So, yeah, but they do have privileges.
I think they get to choose a player on every team. They get to have they got Marc-Andre Fleury off Pittsburgh, but also each team has a list of players that they can say are untouchable.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good choice and
Let's
obviously a good selection.
Let's start a team in Charlotte. We'll have 2 teams in the Carolinas and have one team in Charlotte.
Well, talking about drafting guys though, for starting up teams.
Yeah, go into the NFL Draft, and the first thing that you look at the 2018 Draft is all the quarterback names that are near the top of the list. You talk about Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, and others that are expected to be taken in the first round, especially the first 4 names that I listed that are expected to be taken probably in the top 10, maybe even top 5. So Scott and I were talking about this earlier. It's interesting because it's a great quarterback draft as far as talent, but I think it also plays into effect with most of the teams at the top of the draft order this year need quarterbacks. So regardless of if it was a good quarterback draft or not, they were still going to have to take a quarterback because the Browns obviously still can't find their quarterback. The Giants, the Jets, the Broncos still can't find a guy that after Peyton Manning and even the Buccaneers could potentially use a quarterback if Jameis Winston was to go down. So there's a lot of quarterback needy teams at the top. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on, is this like the best quarterback draft that we've seen? And if not, what was, and when was the last time we saw this kind of talent from the quarterback position?
That's a good question.
Well, it's tough to say, ahead of time because, hindsight's 2020. Looking forward, I disagree with that. I don't think that this is one of the better quarterback drafts in a long time. I think the reason that quarterbacks are being talked about so much is for the reason that you said already, Braxton, and that is the top picks need quarterbacks, so that's where they're going to go. And I mean, if they don't draft there, then their teams are going to be in shambles still, so they have to try something, and that's why all these guys are being talked about. I mean, Baker Mayfield had a pretty electrifying season, but people are concerned about how he may translate into the NFL. Just a lot of it comes from size and mentality too. People are concerned about him off the field.
Explain it to me.
The other 3 guys are maybe a little more prototypical, but they all have issues too, with their performances. I'd say the last time that there was a really good quarterback draft was pretty recently. I mean, Carson Wentz and Jared Goff came in the same draft. And
yeah, but what I'm saying is like pre-draft, there wasn't this much talk about QB.
Okay, I suppose. Pre-draft, this may be one of the more hyped up classes in a while. But as far as just like talent goes, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz coming out of the same draft, I think that's pretty notable just considering that the Rams went to their the NFC Championship as well as, or no, they didn't. They lost.
Goff was 2
early, but they should have.
Yeah, and also Dak Prescott was also.
Yeah, Dak Prescott. Yeah, that's right.
Well, he was picked late.
But I mean, that still counts. That's part of
true.
it.
That's
Dak
true.
Prescott, who had a great rookie season. Jared Goff's been good for 2 years, and now Carson Wentz is probably the best quarterback out of that draft for the Eagles. So I think that altogether is pretty talented from my standpoint.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting when you talk about pre-draft hype. And yes, this is one year that has probably the most hype in a long time from the quarterback standpoint. But I think looking back now that we've seen a lot of these players coming out of the draft, there are 3 to 4 draft classes that are better than this. When I was thinking through this for instance, 2004, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, you throw in Matt Schaub, who had a couple good seasons in Houston. But Roethlisberger has won a Super Bowl. Eli Manning has won a Super Bowl, more than one. Has Phillip Rivers won a Super Bowl?
No. But
so
I mean, he's a good quarterback.
Yeah, he's a good quarterback, franchise quarterback, been to the playoffs a decent amount of times. And so that 2004 had 2 Super Bowl champions and a solid franchise quarterback. I don't see 2 Super Bowl champions coming out of this draft class. That's kind of like what I thought about when thinking through when comparing draft classes. We already talked about 2016 with Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott. Those are 3 really formidable quarterbacks that can lead a team. So I think there's a difference between franchise quarterbacks and Super Bowl winners.
But these quarterbacks in this list have potential to do that.
And so that's why I think
that's why it's so hyped.
Yes, and I think that's true. And there's potential for these quarterbacks to be franchise players on a team, but I don't see Super Bowl winners in them. And so that's where I'm distinguishing these draft classes. Look at 2012, Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson, Nick Foles, Kirk Cousins. And so Russell Wilson won a Super Bowl. Nick Foles, kind of under the radar, but he won a Super Bowl this past year with the Eagles.
That's a good draft. That is a good draft.
And Andrew Luck has battled injuries, but he's a solid quarterback. And so because this upcoming draft, there are so many names, I do think some will do well. Some will fit in with the team and be that franchise guy. Some will be a bust. But I don't know why. Like, I don't see Super Bowl winners coming out of this draft class.
I think, okay, let me ask you both this. If you had to pick a guy from this draft class that right now you just are like, that guy out of all these quarterbacks seems like he could take a team to the Super Bowl, I'll go ahead and give my answer first. I mean, if you're basing it off of leadership and charisma and what we've seen from them thus far, Baker Mayfield, I honestly think, shows to me out of all these guys as taking a team to the Super Bowl.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
That he could do it. And people rag on him for his off-the-field things or whatever and, like, his mentality. Listen, the guy's a competitor.
Yeah, he's got that.
He knows how to lead a football team because he did it at Oklahoma. He has one of the best arms in this draft class as far as accuracy and throw power goes. And I've never seen a guy who wants to win so badly. I mean, the guy steps onto the field every day ready to compete. And whether you like him personality-wise or not, you have to respect that. So, I don't know. For me, I like that question, Scott. I like saying of these guys who could take a team to the Super Bowl, who looks like they might. And I don't know if any of them really do, but if I had to pick one, I think I'm going with Baker.
I think the way you have to answer the question is, what pick do you have? Are you saying, like, first pick, who do you take? If have the quarterbacks, who you take most?
No, Scott's just asking which of them seems like they could carry a team to a Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, I
mean,
like
some of them
Baker
might be
Mayfield.
talented more than others, but
Yeah.
some of them aren't as charismatic or seem like they might take on as much of a leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're going to look for a guy to really become the face of a team and carry a team like that, Baker has the credentials that I think are better than anybody else.
Well, he's got the talent for sure. I think he's really talented. He reminds me of a Drew Brees.
Yes.
Who's
a little more feisty.
Russell Wilson a little bit.
Yeah.
But the problem is we talk so many times in the regular NFL season that, like, Cam Newton is so talented, but his off-the-field stuff and his way he treats the media and the way he
Baker
acts,
Mayfield's got a better arm than Cam does.
He does
though.
have a better arm. And he's more accurate.
That's
the
what I'm
thing.
saying.
That's why
He
I
can
think,
stand in the pocket all day. He doesn't have to run one time, and he
Yeah.
can be successful.
That's why I think he reminds me of Drew Brees because he's so accurate. He can throw through a window anytime he wants to.
Mm-hmm.
He is a little small, but I don't know. It's just leadership, though. I don't think Baker
On the field. I think he really is. I think people rally behind that.
I don't know. If you watch some highlights, there's some cuts of him like not pumping up his teammates because when he gets pissed, he's like Cam. He goes over and pouts on the sideline, and he not like Odell, like bad with throwing helmets or stuff, but he gets pretty upset, and that can really hurt the morale of your team, especially if you're trying to, like, in the fourth quarter win a game. But I mean, he's got the talent. He needs to control his emotions a little bit, but if he could do that, yeah, I can see him being a Super Bowl champion because you need that grit, you need that like will to win, and he's got that going for him. I mean, I don't know, Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, so when I posed that question of could you see these guys winning a Super Bowl, obviously it depends on where they go and where they're drafted. And so, like Baker Mayfield, for instance, at this mock draft I'm looking at, projected to go third to the New York Jets. And so I just think back to last year's draft. Mitchell Trubisky went to Chicago with the second overall pick. They kind of had a growing year last year with Mike Glennon trying to figure that situation out. But now they've got a new coach, and they brought in some free agents. And so now the Bears are in a spot where they have Trubisky in a spot where they can work around him and really mold this team around him and making him the franchise quarterback to make a run in the postseason, kind of where the Bears haven't been for a little while. And so when you're looking at these quarterbacks, what team can do that around a Josh Rosen or Mason Rudolph, a guy we haven't mentioned yet, Baker Mayfield, and so we've seen quarterbacks in the past just get walked on over because they get thrown into the fire at a place. They get banged up. The team's just not ready to compete or whatever it is, and there goes that person's career. And so it's tough to look at it now and say, all right, which one can win a Super Bowl or be a franchise quarterback, because it is so much to do with how a player and a team gel and how they mix. And, is that the right culture for a player? Is Baker Mayfield right for New York? We talked about his off-field issues. Can he handle that big of a stage playing in New York for the Jets or Cleveland, with the 4th pick or whatever might happen? And so I think, I'm still sticking to what I say of with these names, I do not see a Super Bowl quarterback, but that can definitely change based on where a guy gets drafted and what they do to mold that system around their franchise guy.
And I'm wondering too, so we're posing the question of who's going to be most successful. Is that what we're saying, Super Bowl or is most successful in the NFL?
Well, Scott brought the Super Bowl thing up first, and I just thought that was fun. But I mean, if you think about it, it's a lot of skeptical. He goes here and maybe he could do this. I mean, a lot of it does depend on the team that they get picked for. I mean, a guy that gets picked by Denver is going to be a lot more apt to make that kind of run than a guy who gets picked by the Jets. I mean, if Baker Mayfield falls to 5 in Denver, I think that changes the narrative for him. But if Josh Rosen were to fall,
good fit there though.
In
Mayfield,
Denver, it'd be interesting. But I mean, anybody. If Rosen falls to 5, I think then maybe he would have a better chance just because of the team around him. I mean, in the end of the day, football is a team sport. But like we like to do here on Take That for Data, if you go to the stats, I think some of the quarterbacks, for me, show a little bit of lack in either decision making or accuracy, which I think is a big issue coming to the NFL. I think those are two of the more transferable skills. If you see a guy, his pick totals are low and his completion percentage is high, I think that's a great sign. It's a sign that the guy makes good decisions. He knows how to run an offense. He can take care of the football, and you need that out of your quarterback. And looking at some of these guys, like Josh Rosen, great quarterback, threw for over 9,000 yards, threw 59 touchdowns in 3 years, but he had 26 interceptions in 3 years and also only threw 61% for his career at UCLA, which is decent. I mean, it's okay. It's nothing to ooh and ah about, really. So, I mean, how good is his decision-making at 61% and 26 interceptions? And then, I mean, you both know this. When I go to Sam Darnold, I'll go ahead and say it right now. I think this guy is one of the most overrated prospects I've ever seen in all of any draft. I mean, even NBA. I don't see the narrative with Sam Darnold. That's just me. He led NCAA Division I football in interceptions last year. He had 13 picks in his senior year, 22 in 2 years.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
That doesn't get it done. That kind of decision making doesn't get it done. And a guy who was throwing the ball around as much as Sam Darnold in Baker Mayfield is a better decision maker on the field. And I think guys like that who are accurate and don't throw a lot of interceptions, they are more prone to have success when they move forward into the NFL. So I think I'm giving my edge to the quarterbacks who can complete passes and keep the ball from being turned over to the other team.
And so one guy I want to bring up, Josh Allen, he was out of Wyoming, 6'5", 240. Scouts are high on this guy, and teams might draft him in the top 5, maybe even number 1, I saw at one point. But this guy had a 56% completion percent in both of his years at Wyoming, or when he was really starting, and that's not good.
Yeah,
56%, that's not going to get it done in college. Well, I guess maybe playing for Wyoming, I think he had a pretty good career, but 56% is not accurate enough for the NFL. You throw in, Josh Rosen. Scouts are high on him too. Great footwork. I
like him.
Great mechanics, but he's been prone to some injuries. He had a shoulder surgery and a couple concussions at UCLA, and he's also can be hard to coach at times.
You're listening to Take That for Data.
And hearing that from his former coaches, that's not a good sign. Like, you go to the NFL, you got to be a sponge and just accept.
Yeah.
Because you don't. It's in college, you go pick the coach you play for. In the NFL, you could be stuck with somebody, and so you got to be able to adapt and adjust and be coachable. So I'm with you guys. I give the edge, not necessarily for when these guys are going to get drafted, kind of the order, because any of these quarterbacks could go anywhere. But I think in terms of having success in the next level, I give the edge to Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, and Mason Rudolph. Those three guys, out of this draft, quarterbacks that will have success in the pros.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, too, just has to do with what teams like in their prototypical guy. I mean, they want a tall guy who has good footwork and the release looks right. And I mean, look, mechanics obviously mean a lot. They're important. But I wish scouts wouldn't get so hung up on, oh, he's not the right height, or oh, he's not the right weight, or oh, his footwork's a little off.
Russell Wilson.
Wow. How about you look at what he does on the field? Baker Mayfield compared to Josh Rosen. Let's just, real quick. Josh Rosen threw for just over 9,000 yards in 3 years. Baker Mayfield in 3 years at Oklahoma threw for over 12,000 yards at Oklahoma at 69.8%. He threw almost 70% at Oklahoma. Rosen threw 60.9, about 61% at UCLA. Also had just only 21 picks in 3 years, okay? That's great. Sam Darnold had 22 in 2 years. So how are you going to sit here and tell me that Rosen or Darnold or Allen should go above a guy who, to me, clearly proves he's better than them? One of the prompts for today's podcast is, who do you think's the best quarterback in this draft? And everybody's going to hate me for saying this, but I think Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback in this draft. Yep. And I don't think he has to do anything more than show it with his game. I mean, he's already done it. I
was going to say either Josh Rosen or Mayfield. Like, I like Allen, but like you said, I'm not sure if his decision-making is where it needs to be. But, I like Rosen, but Mayfield has all the stats. He has that pedigree. We'll see, how he ends up going. But, if you go to the point of who you're pulling for most, for me, I don't know. I like Mayfield. Maybe I'm pulling for him the most. Maybe Rosen. But I don't know. We'll see where those guys go. And like you guys said, I do think a lot of it has to do with where these guys end up. Because if you go to the Browns, man.
Well, maybe not anymore. They got Jarvis.
Yeah.
They might take Saquon.
Yeah, it just.
And they have Tyrod Taylor, too,
Yeah.
They'll have to compete for that starting job. It's no guarantee.
And it might even give them a year to develop a guy behind Tyrod, maybe 2 years. And then he comes out and the Browns are good all of a sudden. It's kind of like a 76ers ordeal.
The NFL building a roster is so much different, though. The Browns are just so far away. You got to have a good defense, a good offensive line, a good quarterback, and a good running back. It's like there's so many pieces that have to go well, and it's just like the Browns they just don't have that right now. So I mean, we'll see what they can end up going in the future. But I do want to talk about who's the best player in the draft. We talk about these teams that need quarterbacks, and they're probably going to take quarterbacks in the first 5 picks. Outside of that, the Browns have 1 and 4. So there was a report yesterday that they were thinking about drafting 2 quarterbacks for those 4 picks. That would be asinine to me. But
2 quarterbacks? 2
quarterbacks, yes. That was a report yesterday. That came out, yes, yesterday.
Well, if the Browns do that, they've lost my respect.
They've already lost mine. But I am wondering, if these teams did not need a quarterback and it was truly the best prospect out there going into this year's draft, who is that? I know Saquon Barkley from Penn State has been a guy that a lot of people have talked about, running back. But there has been conversations in the past year about, you can pick up a running back in the offseason, and as long as he's strong and has the right understanding of where to run, you can pick up a running back and be okay. But I want to know, who is the best player in this draft going into this 2018 NFL draft?
I got to go with Saquon Barkley. He's proven it at Penn State. The dude is 6 foot 230, and he's just an absolute monster on the field, in the weight room. I don't know if you guys have seen some videos of. I think he had 29 reps of 225 bench press at the NFL Combine for a running back. This guy he runs like a bowling ball at times, but also a freight train. He's got incredible speed, 4.4 40 at the NFL Draft. He can also catch and be a receiver out of the backfield. And, almost one thing that's even more important, or just super important in the NFL, is being able to block and pass protect your quarterback with those quick defensive ends coming around the edge. And Saquon Barkley can do that all. So he can play first, second, and third down, which is such a crucial piece to an NFL team, not having to, when one running back is in the game, it's like, okay, 75% chance they're running it to him because this guy can't block. It's just you make yourself not as predictable when you have a guy that's very versatile, and that's exactly what Saquon Barkley is, and a guy that I wish had won the Heisman but didn't quite have the second half of the season last year at Penn State, but I still think best player in the draft, Barkley.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you were going to ask me, do I think that a good running back can have great success behind a great offensive line, I do believe that.
Yes.
I think the Cowboys have proven that several times. I think back in the day, the Giants did that often when they had a good offensive line. But Saquon Barkley is the best player in this draft. I mean, this guy is a freak. I mean, along with everything that Scott said, in 38 career games, Barkley had 671 touches for 3,843 yards and 43 touchdowns on the ground. He had 102 receptions for 1,195 yards and 8 touchdowns through the air. On top of that, he had 500 kick return yards and 2 touchdowns on kickoffs. So this guy gets it done wherever he needs to. I mean, you put him anywhere on the field with the ball in his hands, and he's going to get it into the end zone. He finds ways into the end zone on his own. Like you said, Scott, he will duck his head down and roll you over for a touchdown, or
It's like Leonard Fournette.
Or he'll leap up and hurdle you completely while you are standing straight up for a touchdown. I mean, the guy is probably the most athletic person in this draft class. He scores at will, and I absolutely think that he is the best player available. But like I said, does that mean you go with him early or first? Not necessarily, maybe, because you could go for a position where that kind of skill set matters a little more, because it's been proven time and time again that, you get a good running back behind a great offensive line, you can do a lot of work with that. So
I think maybe the smartest thing for the Browns to do, because I do agree with you guys, I think Saquon is definitely the best player in this draft. I think maybe you take Barkley at 1 because there are 4 other quarterbacks that have the potential to be successful. So you take Barkley at 1 and you have the 4. So take a quarterback there. Why use a quarterback at 1 when you probably could get one that's good or better at 4?
Well, and if we see Barkley go first for Cleveland, then we'll know
quarterback.
We'll know how they scouted the quarterbacks, basically. If they go for a quarterback first, that means that there was at least one, if not multiple, that they were not comfortable drafting. But if they go with Saquon first, then that means that any of the guys that they worked out at quarterback, those major names that we've been throwing around, they were comfortable if one of them landed on Cleveland's roster. So, when draft night comes and you see that first and 4th pick, it'll tell a lot about how Cleveland has their draft board set up right now.
So, interesting players in the draft. There's always that guy that nobody's talking about, that somebody sneaks up on you and then has a great season in the NFL. For me, Logan Woodside. Do you guys remember the name?
Yes, Toledo quarterback. Man, that guy is incredible. Sure, they got shut out to App State in the bowl game just this past year, but man, this dude is really, really talented from the pocket. It's a guy that just last year threw 28 touchdowns, just 8 interceptions, and a completion percentage of 64. And in his 2016 season, was even better as a junior. He was 70% passing or 70% completion percentage. He had 45 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. So this is a guy that has the success. Now he plays in the MAC, so it's not like the greatest football conference, but he has a lot of talent. And I think he's a guy like Dak Prescott. Yeah, that's what I was just about to bring up.
Who might, fall in the order. He's probably getting picked 2nd or 3rd round, but a guy that picks him up, or like maybe Jimmy Garoppolo, somebody that backs up somebody for a couple years. And this Logan Woodside guy come 2021 could be a guy that we're looking at like, wow, well, we missed out on him.
Yeah. I think I have 2. One I'll go through real quick because it's like a personal one. Then the other is my real answer.
John Walford.
I like that one.
Okay.
It's another Wake Forest guy.
Okay.
It's Jesse Bates, who's actually pretty high on draft boards. I think he's going to go 1st round. But he's a cornerback coming out of Wake Forest. Absolute speed on this guy. He flies. He can stick with anybody in the league. He's a ball hawk, too. He really goes for it when it's up in the air. And I really like this guy a lot. I think you put him on some of those speed guys like Brandon Cooks and like Tyreek Hill, he can give them a little trouble and at least maybe slow them down for a little while. But my main answer for this is going to be a name that has been thrown around a lot in draft talk, but it's Derwin James, safety out of Florida State. He's 6'2", 215 pounds, had a great combine. He ran a 4.47 as a safety, which is pretty great for a 40 time for a guy of that size. He had 21 reps on the bench, which obviously isn't as much as Saquon Barkley, but we're talking about him being the best player in the draft. So, 21 reps on the bench for a safety at 215, that's not too bad. And then in college, 186 tackles. He had 110 solos, so you know that he's a solid tackler. He had 15 tackles for loss as a safety, let me remind you. 5.5 sacks, 3 picks, and a pick 6 in his career. The thing that I like with this guy is he reminds me of a Shaq Thompson in college at Washington, who now converted to outside linebacker for the Carolina Panthers, and they kind of changed his diet and regiment to make him that way. And I think Derwin James is a guy who teams should consider doing that with. When he played at Florida State, he was the most comfortable up at the line of scrimmage, not necessarily in coverage. Obviously he was a great coverage guy. He's a fantastic safety, but he liked being a kind of a hawk up at the line of scrimmage, playing more of like that robber role, kind of right up.
The spy.
Yeah. Just being right up in the mix of things. And obviously with a 4.47, he's got a lot of speed, which is important at outside linebacker. He could be great for covering tight ends and some of those skill positions when you need a guy who's really solid in one-on-one coverage. Like I said, he's a solid tackler with 110 solo in his college career. So I think that's something to look for. And Shaq Thompson is 6'2", 229. This guy is 6'2", 215. So it would not be that hard to get him to a point where he could play outside linebacker in the professional football league and maybe even have a little bit of a height advantage on a guy like Shaq Thompson and a speed advantage on a guy like Shaq Thompson. So I think Derwin James is a name to look out for. Whether teams take him more as a safety or more as a linebacker, I think he can do a lot wherever he fits in.
Yeah, and so we talked the whole beginning of this podcast about the quarterbacks running back with Saquon Barkley, but I love the defensive players in this draft class, especially in that first round. Guys like Bradley Chubb, Tremaine Edmonds out of Virginia Tech, Roquan Smith, Darren Payne, Alabama, Vita Vea. I think he's a guy out of Washington. Reminds me a lot of Starlo Tulele, who can just on the front be a run stopper. And that's really effective in the NFL. But the guy I really want to talk about here is Roquan Smith, another outside linebacker out of Georgia. Now, you talk about Derwin James, a safety running the 4.47, is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
40. Roquan Smith ran a 4.5 40 as an outside linebacker, 6'1", 240. I loved watching him play at Georgia, especially in that college football playoff. The dude is a monster, absolutely elite athletic ability. He's smart, and he reminds me a little bit of Thomas Davis. The way that he hawks the ball and just smells out where the ball is going and beats the running back or receiver.
Another Georgia guy too.
Another Georgia guy, absolutely. And another thing about Roquan Smith, he played wide receiver in high school. So
wow,
I talk about versatility and athleticism. This guy, 6'1", 240. Imagine Roquan Smith. Imagine trying to defend him in high school when you know he's about to be an outside linebacker at Georgia. And so I think he's a guy, if you're an NFL team, really look after Roquan Smith. He can be good for a long time in the NFL.
All right, so the draft coming up next week. It's April the 26th through the 27th, and that'll be on NFL Network. So we'll have to check and see what the Browns do with those first pick and the fourth. Question of the week, though, I want to ask you guys. Baseball, they play 162 games a year. How many baseballs do you guys think that they have in circulation through every season?
How many baseballs
in the MLB
they use?
as a whole?
Yeah.
So
throughout the entire year.
Good Lord.
Baseballs are used. Okay, so every game there's got to be like 30 used.
I'll give you this. 72 on average are used per game. 72 baseballs on average. That's ridiculous. Yes, it is. But
what do they do with foul balls?
Well, they're the fans. They give.
They give out a lot of balls.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going with.
So just times that 70 by 160.
12,000.
I can't do the math. 20,000.
You guys are going to be shocked. Crazy but true. Also, did you know this week, 850,000 baseballs on average are used per year in a regular season MLB.
Wow.
You could sustain a baseball company off of that alone.
You could. That's why Rawlings is doing so good, because they make baseballs.
They just
too.
make baseballs for MLB.
Yeah. So 850,000 baseballs are in circulation
in just
for the league.
majors.
That's
Just the
that's what I'm
majors,
saying.
right.
Think about how many college
minors,
baseball teams there are.
Minor
talk
leagues,
about
college,
Minors,
knowing
high school,
it.
even high school. High school
imagine?
baseball, they probably don't use that many, but they still use
Right.
a lot of baseballs.
I think it's in the 20s for high school, for how many baseballs are used for
Ridiculous. Talk about consistent
Maybe I should get
business.
into the baseball manufacturing industry.
Yeah, there you go. If sports broadcasting doesn't work out for Grace Salter, you can find him making baseballs in his spare time.
Find me making baseballs, I'll be making bank.
Yeah, you will. Did you know that's what they were going on this week? 850,000 baseballs per year in the pros. Next week, for Did You Know, find out what is the only sport that has been played on the moon. That's next week and more. Thanks for listening. Take that for data. He is Scott Spickard on Twitter at ScottSpickard4. Grace Salter on Twitter at Grace Salter Sport. And I'm Braxton Critcher, your host on Twitter at Braxton Critcher. Thanks for listening, everybody. We're back next week.
Take That for Data on WASUradio.com is a weekly podcast with hosts Braxton Critcher, Grace Salter, and Scott Spickard, breaking down college and professional sports statistics and what they mean to your favorite teams. And now you can join the conversation. Follow the podcast on Twitter at _TakeThat4Data, or email the guys at TakeThat4Data with your input or topic ideas. Never miss a show by joining the podcast email group to receive the weekly show in your inbox. Take That for Data is a production of WASU Sports, where App State sports fans live, breathe, and bleed Mountaineer sports.
What's up, Statisticians? I'm Braxton Critcher, and I'm the host of Take That for Data. You can follow me on Twitter at Braxton Critcher.
What's up, guys? Grace Salter here, co-host on Take That for Data. Love bringing you guys the most up-to-date statistics every week in the sports world. You can follow me on Twitter at Grace Salter Sport.
Hey everyone, I'm Scott Spickard. You can also follow me on Twitter at ScottSpickard4. Love Take That for Data in our podcast every week.
You can follow us on Twitter at _TakeThat4Data. Find us on SoundCloud as well. And we are Take That for Data.